In the previous video on hover, I mentioned about an image overlay, something that I use all the time. Let's have a look at that. This block has gotten completely out of control. I'm going to delete it so we can start from scratch and have something reasonably respectful to work with. I'll delete it and I'll bring in a new block. Click here on the plus, create your own. Let's do the same thing. Click here on the settings and we go to the background image, and I'll bring in the same image that we had previously. We add content in there just to give it a little bit more of an effect. So we can say a heading and a paragraph, and we can bring in a button as well for people to click on. So we call this our main heading. And I'll see what we have here for heading 1. Under typography, heading 1. Okay, good enough. And then for this text, and let's also put all of this in the center, But I have a problem here, and you can see that the image that I've chosen here with this light text that we are using, we have an issue over here, and that is I cannot read what it's saying there. In short, this happens when there is not enough contrast between the two elements. You have text and you have the image in the back, and the two colors, there isn't enough contrast, and that makes it very difficult to read the text. So what you need to do is apply contrast. There's a few ways you can do it. The first way you can do it is to actually change the color of the text. Let's select the text and let's go to the two opposites. The first one is white, all the way here. Wow, now I can read it very clearly over this tulip, but now it gets lost over here because there's not enough contrast on the left. Let's go for black. We choose that. Much better, but still not that easy to read over here. Now what we do in this case, and let's put it back on that gray, the second one from the right that it started with, is to apply an overlay over the entire image that will help you have that contrast that you are looking for to make all your text legible. Go to the settings of your block, and then here you know is where you add your image, and right next to it is where you can apply a background color, which is named overlay when we work with the block. Now, if I choose something lighter, let's say we go here for white, it's going to apply that white color as a background color over the image. But absolutely not what we want, because whoop, our image is gone. And that's where the transparency slider here on the right comes into play. Currently, it is set to 100% opacity. And opaque means you cannot see through it. So it's 100% not see-throughable. That's not a word, but kind of there's no transparency applied to it. What we do is we increase the transparency and decrease the opacity by dragging this slider down. And now the image in the background comes through, but also we retain that contrast that we had with the white, and the text still stands out. Here you have to look at your text over that tulip and make a judgment call at what point you think it becomes very difficult to read. And I'm going to put it here on 60. And if you're unsure, the safest bet is always to add a little bit more opacity, so less transparency, and we put it there at 70. This is a big mistake that a lot of new beginners to design make, is that they don't pay enough attention to the legibility of your text. If text gets lost over something that is not contrasting enough, it just doesn't look good. In this case, let's say you come to me and say, but JP, I really want the colors of this image to pop out. I really want the original image. I don't want this overlay. You can go for other design options. To remove the overlay, you need to grab the slider on the right where the transparency is, increase it all the way until you have no opacity. It's 100% transparent, and then you will have your original image back. To achieve that effect that we were talking about, in this case, I will probably bring in columns like so, drop it at the top, and then click, hold, and drag the text into the column on the left. Oops, let's try it again. There. And the button, and I will align them all to the left. So we have this kind of hero section And then let's just increase the padding at the top and the bottom. Okay, and let's do it like so. There we go. And that's how you're going to avoid this text overlapping. And even drag it a little bit like so to around 60-40. Very simple. You see, 1, 2, 3, we have a nice hero section again, like we had worked on previously, this time with the image on the back. The overlay is also important if you want to create a mood. So here we have an image with a lot of color, but let's say you have a very somber, dark little website and you want to apply something muted to it. That's where you will also bring in the overlay, because you can apply it consistently throughout your whole website. So I'll grab a very dark color like this one, and then I will reduce the opacity. But now we'll definitely have to go to our text and put it on a contrasting color to dark, which is light. And there you have a different effect. And then you can apply this kind of effect to all the images and backgrounds all over the site to have that consistently. The last one here I want to point out is that with color, you also get the option to apply a gradient. And I love gradients. In this case, I'm going to apply a gradient that will have the dark color appear here, but will have my tulips come out in their natural color. Select the settings, then we go to colors, and then you will see within the color picker area, we have this little drop down feature. Currently it is set to solid, which means one color. If you select the drop down, you will see there is gradient. Once you select gradient, it's going to give you a slider at the top with 2 colors to choose from. The color that you have originally will appear over here, and then it will just throw in a random color here on the right, for some reason always green, probably to show you, hey, there's a funky second color now in play. The first thing you have to make sure is that which of the colors you are changing. I want to keep this color, and you will see that little white dot. That means that this is the one that is currently selected. I want to change the green, so select the dot with the green, and now I will choose my white swatch. So you will see we have a nice gradient here from this dark red to the white. But because I want the tulips to be more natural, what I will do is reduce the opacity only of the white color, here with my slider, almost all the way to 0. You cannot go to 0, because once you go to 0, it removes it. So what is that? 3%? That's good enough. Now I have an overlay on the left, which allows my white text to still pop through. But on the right, I've reduced the overlay almost all the way to 0. That makes the natural colors of the image come out. If you need a little bit more of a harder transition, because we have the red starting very strong here, and then it fades out very quickly. To do that, you bring in a stop, or you create a stop by grabbing the red one here and then dragging it to the right. And as I do that, you can actually see a visible line there created, and I can drag it quite far, all the way to the right. But I'm going to drag it to around here. And because we dragged it, we can clearly see there is a little bit of a barrier line buffer here where you have that transition happening quicker. But if a person comes to your website, they're not going to notice that. You can do it with the white as well, if you want to have more white on this side, but that becomes just too harsh. So I'll keep that there and even reduce this one a little bit, because we can still see this text pretty well. Great. And you can apply overlay to the background of blocks, also images. So where we had created this previous testimonial, I can select again here, the color or overlay. And now this is where I talk about consistency. I can use this pink color here, and I'll reduce it to around 40%. It just applies that little bit of pastel. And if I go to each and every image now, and I apply the rose pink, and I bring it down to 40, more or less to 40, we're not gonna split hairs over that 1%. We do the same for Samantha. Even though Samantha prefers teal. We're going to put that on 40. There we go. Now you have these images that they are from different people taken with different cameras in different settings. But because you have applied this overlay consistently on all of them, they feel as if they are unified. Overlays work great for that. Overlays work great for contrast. And then don't forget about the gradient, that also very useful. especially if you have something like a button here. You click here on the button. Let's include a hover. So you remember now the hover is over here. For the background, I'll put it now on gradient. I'll change this one. I'll put it on teal, but what I'll do is I'll select the teal. So we have two teals now on both sides, but this one I'm going to drag to a darker color in the color picker. So when I hover over it, you have that kind of effect there. It's a little too strong, so I can reduce that a little bit, but that's a very nice effect also to apply for the button. Check out the overlays, have a look at the gradient and also how you can change the angle of the gradient. So with the hover selected in the gradient, you have the option here for linear or radial, which will give you that round effect. And if we put it back on linear, you have the option to change the angle so that this one is more slanted to the direction you want it to be.